We Really Never Change by Bobo James. I was sitting quietly in the living room. I carefully studied the room. I examined the pictures of my family on the wall. As I looked up to them, my family has a history of helping people in one way or another. I glanced up at the clock. Every so often, I knew my parents would be back any minute. I would tell them the news then. I sat in the armchair, the one my father usually sits in. I had my uniform on. I let out a sigh. I knew I should have told them, but they would have never permitted it. I felt very strongly about doing this, though, and would accept my father's wrath. I heard the door open. My mother and father came through into the living room, like they do every day at this time. They were talking. They seemed so happy. I almost wished I wasn't telling them. After all, I wasn't leaving for a few more days. Yet, I just wished I could have told them at a different time. Well, I couldn't change anything now. The second they had saw me in the uniform, my mother almost fainted, and would have fallen had it not been for my father. My father just stared at me with a mixture of disappointment and sadness. I felt a distance start to grow between us that hadn't been there before. The blood drained from my face, and my body began to shiver a little. "Why?" my mother asked in a thin voice, full of pain. I opened my mouth to answer, but the words were caught in my throat. I swallowed instead. Tears streamed down my mother's face now. I felt my stomach clench. I felt sick. "Son, why are you wasting your life like this?" my father asked. His eyes pleaded. "I want to help people. I want to save people, father," I cried out. "Son, you save people almost every day. You're a doctor," he reasoned. "Yes," nodding my head up and down. "I save the rich, people who can't afford it." I pointed to a picture of my grandfather on the wall. "I want to save people, like my grandfather did," trying to reason with him. My father just looked at me, depressed, like he was going to break into tears, as my mother had. I grew up without a father. My last memory of him is in his uniform leaving us. He never came back. Will you ever come back, son? Will you? I left the room after that, grabbed my suitcase, and walked out of my house. It was the last time I ever saw my parents. "I can't believe you left them like that, Henry," my friend Jones said to me with surprise. "Well, I had no choice. It would have been impossible to stay. They would have only tried to convince me not to go," I replied, thinking back to the argument I had with them. "Man, I don't get it. Why did you enlist? You could be rich. I hear people pay good money for personal doctors." He was eyeing me curiously. Well, I couldn't live with myself if I didn't do something to help. I've had such a privileged life. It's time I gave something back. There's so many out there suffering. I could be making a difference, I explained passionately. "Yeah, it is getting bad out there. The number of people who die every day, it's bad, buddy. You might not come back. Have you thought about that?" His voice was full of concern. "I fully understand the risks. That's why I'm asking you to give my parents this. When I leave in 2 days, I want you to give this letter, okay?" With great intent in my voice, I said it. Sigh. "Okay, Henry, I will." His face was very serious. Most serious I ever saw it. "Are you ready to leave, son?" the voice demanded. "Yes, sir," I responded. "You may not survive the journey, son. But for the Emperor, we all make sacrifices." "Yes, sir," I clenched my jaw. "Your sacrifice is a noble one. To save the lives of your brothers and sisters in arms, something truly honorable." "Yes, sir," my voice filled with pride. I boarded the spaceship and flew off into the stars.